Hey guys, real quick, only 40% of our viewers are actually subscribed, so let's change that right now. Hit that subscribe button right below. It was Underdog weekend. My picks were looking great. I picked all the underdogs. I was 4-0 on these first 4 games, Thursday and Friday, thinking these are on Thanksgiving, all 3 underdogs won outright.
Yeah.
Could it happen again on Black Friday?
My pick started badly and improved as the weekend went on.
And it did. Underdogs win again. The Chicago Bears, 24. Philadelphia Eagles, 15. Bears move to 9-3.
Not just win, but kick their ass.
Absolute beatdown on the ground, which is interesting because when you beat teams badly on the ground, it doesn't always show up in dominant points.
281 rushing yards.
Yes.
2 running backs over 120.
I had some more stats for you in a minute. 24-15. Bears get the win over the Eagles. Bears, as of right now, your number 1 seed. They'll be sitting at home. Week 1 of the playoffs with a bye. Number 1 seed in the NFC. The 9-3 Bears. Eagles fall to 8-4. Yes, Kyle Monangai, rookie running back out of Rutgers, 22 carries for $130. DeAndre Swift, 18 carries for $125. Caleb Williams had 4 first downs with his legs between scrambles and sneaks, and 281 official rushing yards for the Bears. Their running backs ran for 12 first downs compared to 1 for the Eagles and Saquon Barkley. They absolutely wrecked the Eagles up front in the trenches.
Well, there's 2 elements of this. There's the stuff that's the same from the Eagles, and then there's the new element, which is they got absolutely wrecked on the ground with the Chicago's run game. So that's like the new element. That's in the last few weeks, the Eagles' defense has been phenomenal, and they've been keeping them in all these games when the offense is terrible. The Eagles' offense remained a disgrace in this game. They were 10-3 at halftime, which was a minor miracle for Philadelphia. They were booed off the field. Hurts was playing terribly, missing open targets, throwing ugly, scramble drill, double coverage interceptions. Which is one of those ones where we're not sure who he's aiming at. Like that, when the throw is bad enough that you can debate which guy he was targeting, that's usually a pretty bad sign. That was one of those. And then, the only good thing they've got going is a touchdown to A.J. Brown where he just owns a cornerback, right? Because he's still A.J. Brown. So their offense remains egregious, but the new element this week was giving up 280 rushing yards on the ground. Ollie Connolly on Twitter had Hurts has been egregiously bad today. The game plan has been egregiously bad. Without Lane Johnson, the Eagles line is vulnerable. The Bears are down to their 4th and 6th string linebacker, and there's a stunning lack of design to put those guys in conflict. This offense is terrible.
Yeah, I was looking, sometimes you have a theory and you test it out and it's not right. I was trying to see how much we talked about Saquon's long runs last year and how much that affected him. So I was like, how different is the run game this year versus last year if you take those plays out? So I looked at it, and it's still pretty significant, right? I mean, it's like those plays are doing the heavy lifting, and Saquon averaging almost 6 yards per carry last year, obviously, when he has 50-plus yard runs. But even if you take out any explosive plays, there's just nothing going for Philadelphia's run game. And then you see Chicago, and it's like seeing the plan come together. As I'm watching that game, I'm watching the Bears, and I think DeAndre Swift has never run better as far as decisiveness and finish.
Yeah.
And, he's already fast and quick, but he's also decisive and one cut, and he's just running the scheme extremely well. And then you have Monangai. It's like, oh, we stopped for 1. No, it's 3. First down, right, on with 1 yard to go. And just running through contact. And it's, it's a little lazy to say. They've got their David Montgomery. They've got their Jahmyr Gibbs. But there is this element of the power and the speed and the differences stylistically. And then you go back to this offseason and day 1 of free agency, or right around even before free agency, the trade for Joe Thuney, grabbing Drew Dahlman at center, getting Jonah Jackson in a trade. And you're like, all right, they're fully invested in this offensive line. That was the first course of action. They invested in the defensive line as well. But you're just seeing it all come together for Chicago. And in this game, Caleb Williams wasn't even great in this game. He threw an absolute back-breaking dime to go up 2 scores, which was unreal. Rolling to his left, flick of the wrist, perfect throw. But the number of there were some gimmies in there that he missed, and there were some plays that Caleb Williams would probably want back. But I'm watching this game thinking, like, you can see the whole vision coming together. The power of the Bears, the two-headed monster of a run game, and if you just get a cleaner game from Caleb Williams, which he's played at other times this year, but you put that all together, you could see the Ben Johnson offense, and the fact that they beat the Eagles up this badly was so impressive.
And Nahshon Wright continues to just make a mockery of your assessment of him as a not very good corner. The dude just decided, basically since you said he wasn't great, to go out there and make game-changing plays every week. This one, he forced fumble on the push play, just rips it away from Jalen Hurts, then goes down and recovers it under like the death pile of the push play.
Impressive play.
Which, by the way, was basically the same play as the Giants made on the Eagles earlier in the season when the officials decided that the play was over and just took it away from them. In fact, it was probably later in the play than the Giants managed it. But that's, an interesting inconsistency in the officiating. But, yeah, amazing play by Nahshon Wright. It continues to just make these spectacular game-changing turnovers week on week on week.
I'll stick to my theory that the fact that the Eagles have to practice the tush-push the way that they do affects the rest of their offense, even though it didn't last year. We'll stick with that.
But going back to that Eagles offense, it's in everything's bad. Like, Connolly's point is legit, which is the Bears' defense had a couple of fairly obvious glaring weaknesses heading into this week based off personnel, and the Eagles did almost nothing to scheme those guys into difficult situations. Like, can you imagine going back to Kyle Shanahan? If you told Kyle Shanahan that was the situation for an opposition team, they're down to 4th and 6th string linebackers. What are you going to do? Kyle Shanahan would have those guys in a blender from play one throughout the entire game, and the Eagles didn't. And then even when they've dialed something up that has an open guy, Jalen Hurts wants no part of it. Instead, he's just looking to the outside and hoping A.J. Brown's open deep down the field. Like, Dallas Goedert is running wide open over the middle, and Jalen Hurts is reading the opposite side of the field, going nowhere. So it's this combination of the scheme is terrible and Jalen Hurts is playing badly. Everything's low percentage, and it's just not going anywhere.
Yeah, and I know we talk about this a lot. We mentioned it every week. I don't know how much is the play caller and how much is the quarterback when it comes to why do they do this? Why don't they do these things? Right? I think there's a lot of times the play caller feels limited by the quarterback. And then there's other times, like Sam Darnold's career. All of a sudden, like, you could easily make the excuse if you're Kevin O'Connell last year or Clint Kubiak this year, like, Sam Darnold, he hasn't had a great career. He's limited. But then he gets to this place, and you're like, man, they're doing well by Darnold. They're putting him in position to succeed. Andy's making some huge throws. I don't think you've never had this point in your career where it's like Jalen Hurts is living in this really good offense that's well designed for him.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much of that is on him. He's had good playmakers. You could say, well, once he got A.J. Brown, his stats went through the roof, and he's been great, and he's got the tush push, and he's got all these free touchdowns that they give him at the goal line, so the stats are great. So it's a tricky situation because I think Jalen Hurts is good. I think he's done a nice job just being a winning quarterback, and that's not an overrated statement, right? You play to win, and you got to play to the strengths of your team, and I think he does that. And has won for a reason, not because he's bad, but clearly there are some limitations to his game. He's not a timing and rhythm passer, right? He's going to get to the top of his drop, and it's kind of slow, and it's slow developing, and it's similar to what I just said about Burrow. It's just a low percentage, and I don't know how much of that is Hurts and how much of that's the play caller.
The fact that they didn't, dial up a bunch of stuff to attack those linebackers, I think, is a concerning thing in this game, because either the scheme doesn't do that, or is so, they're so focused on their own game that they're not even going to attack an obvious weakness of an opponent in any given week, which I think is a pretty bad thing for a coach, or the coach couldn't do that with Jalen Hurts as his quarterback. Either one of those things is bad. And from the outside, it doesn't really matter which is the case. It's the fact that it didn't happen is the bigger problem. The fact that their defense then got absolutely wrecked on the ground by the Bears' offense is just an added problem to this. But this is, I mean, they're not in trouble. They're 8-3. You know, it's sort of like they're going to make the playoffs. But for a team that's the defending champion and the bar is Super Bowl, not playoffs, I mean, this is a team that looks closer to the collapse team than the one that won the Super Bowl.
You're absolutely right. And the way you positioned it, like a new concern, because Philly's pass defense has been really good the last couple of years with Vic Fangio. I still think they're going to be tough to throw the ball on and combination of pass rush and the way they cover. But the run defense, Jalen Carter, Moro Ojomo, Jordan Davis, like they got owned up front, those defensive tackles. Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond, the linebackers, owned by this Bears run game. The two running backs and the offensive line, the overall blocking scheme from Chicago. And it was, you know, when we say, hey, everything looks wrong for the Eagles, everything looked right for Chicago. The running backs ran hard. They broke tackles. They blocked it well up front, and they schemed it up well too, right? Like it's every time there was a little bit of eye candy, it felt like the Eagles bit and it opened up holes, right? So everything was good from scheme to blocking to the runners. And that's what leads to 281 yards on the ground. It's really more than that because of Niels.
Yeah.
Almost 300 yards on the ground. And again, outside of a couple throws, Caleb Williams didn't even play a great game, and the Bears dominated up front.
And then right at the end, you've got the wrinkle of the speed that Caleb Williams has.
So fast,
like
man.
you're already having to worry about defending two running backs that have each gone off for a $125 or whatever. And then, oh, by the way, if we just have a naked bootleg, Caleb Williams can outrun almost anybody on your defense to the edge and get 2 or 3 or 4 yards and just keep this drive going.
All he is, I mean, his speed is unbelievable. How many times has this happened to us now in the scouting process where a quarterback comes in, and it's not even that we didn't appreciate his athleticism. It was just underrated.
Yeah.
Josh Allen's running ability was underrated. I think even Justin Fields, by the way, never really ran in college that much, but once you got to the NFL, it's like that speed is legit, and Mahomes' running ability, and now you have Caleb Williams' speed to the edge. I think the Bears could tap into that even more because most of the time you see him as a scrambler, but you start using him in the design run game, he is.
But that was a perfect way.
He has legitimate speed.
Yeah, that was a perfect way. It's like late in the game, you're just everyone knows you're running at the clock. You know, the Eagles are going to load up everything to stop the run game that they've already hemorrhaged 280 yards against or whatever. And then you just like blip, naked bootleg, Caleb Williams keeps it, and you're like, oh, no, we're not. Like, there's one guy with a shot of stopping that, and that one guy is probably slower than Caleb Williams. So we're done.
So really impressive by the Bears. We're already over an hour in. I don't know how much you want to bring up the down 15, go for 2 discourse because it was an island game. Eagles are down 24-9. They score a touchdown, so it's a 15-point deficit. Now they're down 9. They go for 2 early, and the discourse starts. It gets stopped, so the Eagles are still down 9 with about 3 minutes left. Bears run out the clock. Game's over. Greg Olsen, of course.
Yeah,
comes back.
Let's just sum it up with that. I think we've had this conversation multiple times. It's easy enough. The whole point is you're going to need 2 at some point. So that's the discussion, is that you want the 2. You want to know earlier if you fail on the 2-point or not, because that's what determines the game. So Greg Olsen and then J.J. Watt, I think, articulated both sides of this debate, and it won't really shock you to learn which side each one came down on. Greg Olsen, the 2-point conversation is this. Philly trail by 15. That's a 2-score game, slightly less than 50% of the time, 2-point success rate. It's a 3-score game, the remaining percentage. You want to know as early as possible how many possessions you need. That's why you go for 2 down 9. It's not debatable at all. Again, the math, the analytics says the earlier you know, the more chance you have to do something about it. If you wait until the end, you can't fix it if you don't get it. J.J. Watt responds with, analytically, that's absolutely correct. The counterpoint would be the human element of a team's mindset mentality only being down 1 score instead of 2. Right or wrong, there's some unquantifiable aspect to the belief and confidence of knowing you're only down 1 score. I actually think there's merit to both sides of that argument. I do think that this is more complicated than simply the numbers say go for 2 earlier, always follow the numbers, because I think Watt is probably right that there's something to the motivation and how you're going to play knowing that you're only down 1 score, not 2, which though theoretically it was better to know early, is still bad. Like, you basically know at that point the game's done. My takeaway from that is the discussion that should have been had on the broadcast. But instead, we got Herb Street, so all you heard was like a muttering about analytics and like shucks, right? This stupid letdown of viewers. That's the counterpoint that should have been happening in the booth between the announcers, even if it was just the color guy articulating both sides of the argument, instead of just saying, well, I guess the numbers say go for it. I don't know why. And then on we go, right? I would have, actually waited. Like, nobody cares what you would do. Articulate the argument because that's your job.
And Olson came back with a bunch of other tweets and, walked through some of the thought process and everything, which I thought was great. I mean, Olson's basically saying, I know all this because it's my job. Yeah. He came back with one of his tweets was essentially that, right? Like, I know these percentages because that's my job to articulate it. And in this particular case, I think he agreed with the decision to go down 2. But the point is not even, like you said, for the announcers to agree with the decision.
It's just to know what the discussion is.
It's to know what the discussion is. And I think you're absolutely right. First off, there are merits on both sides of this discussion, like the human element of being within one score, and then the idea of if you know you're not going to get the 2-point conversion, it's better to know it earlier than at the very end of the game when you can't do anything about it. That's the whole point. And I would argue it's not even analytics really, because it's not a difference in math. It's like it's a difference in logic, because the other part of if you're down 9 and you're like, the human element, right? You're not as motivated and you're not going to get a stop. Well, the offense changes too. When they feel like they're up 2 scores, they're inherently more conservative. Just running out the clock. They're probably going to go run, and there's no chance they're even going to pass. Now, that goes both ways as well, right? Do you want the offense to go run, which is your best chance of stopping them, or do you actually want them to go run, pass, and even though they might have more of a chance to convert and they're more aggressive, you have a chance of an incompletion and you save some clock. So that goes into this as well, right? It's not just, oh man, our guys are going to feel upset that we're down 2 and we're going to take the crowd out of it, or down 2 scores. It's also, what does the offense do in turn?
Yeah.
The other part that I'll say too is a lot of former players, I think, come at this from you're less motivated to make the stop and blah, blah, blah. I think the biggest point everybody's missing is the coaches are making this decision because they think they're making the best decision to win the game.
Yeah.
Right? They're not just,
of course,
they're not just wildly picking a decision out of nowhere.
Well, the point is there's no statistical argument you can make at all on J.J. Watt's side of the argument, right? Every single data point supports the other side of the argument. And Greg Olson has articulated some of them. Like, again, this idea that you play harder knowing that it's only a 1-score game than a 2-score game. Well, all the data says that the teams actually get stops at a higher rate when they're down 9 or more, i.e. 2 scores, in those final 4 minutes than they do when they're only down 1 score. Like, the data goes the other way, if anything. It actually says that
Olson brought the data to the table. He said when you're down 9, you're more likely to make those stops, and that goes back to it's because the offense is probably more conservative.
Right. Now, exactly. That's the thing. Like, I think it's always a muddy picture. I don't think it's necessarily the case that J.J. Watt is wrong on this when he says that they fight harder. I think there are other factors involved. But the point is, you can only make a statistical argument in one direction. And all of the data says, go for 2 earlier. Greg is right. That's the way to do it. But I do think that there's something to the J.J. Watt side of it, which is I do think it changes how your team is going to play potentially for the better to keep it a 1-score game. The question is that enough to offset the wealth of data that goes in the opposite direction?
2 things really quick, though. It is on the coach. It's like, I feel like JJ or whoever, and again, there's merits to that perspective. They're coming at it from, as if the players are like shocked by this strategy. Like, oh man, I thought we were going to be in a 1-score game and crazy coach went out, decided to go for 2. Now we're down 9 and I'm sad. Like, that's the tone. I'm being a little facetious, but that's the tone. When the coaches are spending hours upon hours, presumably, over all of these decisions. And then it's their job to coach up the players. Like, Dan Campbell's players know he's going to go for fourth down. And it's not just because he's, I'm crazy Dan Campbell, I'm going for it on fourth down, and we love this. Like, there's also some reasoning behind it, and there's a little meathead behind it, and it all adds up to, like, that's their identity, and that's what they do. A good coach is going to say, listen, guys, every decision I make is to try to maximize our ability to win. And, like, let's be on board and trust me on this. And, I'm not doing this to hang you out to dry or what. Like, we're doing this to win. Just like you're doing everything you can to win. So there's some coaching going on here where it's not like the analysts sometimes are taken aback because they haven't done the research or they haven't been coached up on it.
That's the big takeaway. This is still a massive failure in basic ignorance of the subject matter. Like, it's a really compelling and obvious case why you go for 2 in this situation. And when Sirianni was asked about it afterwards, he articulated it in the simplest terms, which is the one, like the starting point of this conversation, which is you're going to need the 2 at some point anyway. You might as well go for it earlier because then if you need the extra possession on top of that, and that changes everything. Like, it's simple. It's easy. It's very easy to articulate, and all the data supports that side of things. I think there is still, a shred of argument on the J.J. Watt side, which is, it changes the way your team plays knowing you're still only down theoretically 1 score. I mean, 2-point conversion is not, you could argue that's not 1 score, but whatever. I think there's still a case to be made. But the point is, it feels like every time this happens, like the wealth of people are still supporting why would you do that? Keep it a 1-score game. Just because all the announcers, with the exception of Greg Olson, don't know what the argument is and nobody articulates it. So everyone's still like, why would you go for 2? That's crazy. What are they doing? I guess the analytics told them. Like, everyone acts like it's a dumb, numbers-driven, spreadsheet stat thing, as opposed to, like, this is fairly obviously the way you should be doing it unless you believe the J.J. Watt feels offsets this. And because nobody knows, nobody hears that argument. It's just, analytics.
And it's also positioned as, like, there's some nerd sitting above that's, like, wielding all the power.
Some guy with a spreadsheet just told him to do it.
But the football coach makes the decision.
Of course.
The football guy, the guy that was hired, the football guy makes the decision, right?
Like, I agree with Greg Olson. This is his job, and it's an egregious failing of your job if you do not. These guys are paid millions of dollars, and I think there's maybe 2 of them that can actually articulate that argument live on the spot. Everyone else just shrugs and says analytics.
So this was Olson's follow-up here, and then we'll wrap it. He said, I've been asked why I defend these strategies or to just let it go. The answer is I take great responsibility to share the modern game and the way it's being played, not the game when I played or the way I wish it was played, the behind the scenes of what's shaping data-based decision-making used by all 32 teams, whether people are comfortable with it or not, which is, we tend to prop up Greg Olson on here because it's not about the decision. It's just that he understands it.
Yeah.
I appreciate his willingness to understand it, and we try to understand it. The bottom line in this entire discussion, though, Sam, is we are arguing about fractions of a percentage of win probability. So the actual decision doesn't matter a ton because if you don't make the 2-point conversion as the Eagles did, you're probably screwed anyway. Whether you do it with 3 minutes left or whether you do it with 10 seconds left, if you don't make the 2, you're probably not winning. But it is a worthwhile discussion just because, for me, it didn't make sense to me. Like, I say this all the time. It didn't make sense to me until someone explained it to me, until I had to think it beyond what I was used to. You're used to, you save the 2-point conversion for the end. That's just what we're used to.
Yeah.
Right? You play for the tie and you go to overtime until somebody said, what if you did it early and you sacrificed being down now? What if you did it early just in case you had to get an onside kick because if the Eagles got another drive, they would know we have to score in a minute. We can't spend 3 minutes. Right. We have to score in a minute or else the game's over.
It's such a dereliction of duty from the announcers because the fact that you're not making that case means you've never bothered to find out. Because it's very simple. Once you've heard the explanation and it makes sense and it clicks, it's not necessarily intuitive, but once you've heard the argument, it makes a ton of sense.
And I see.
And the fact that it never gets articulated in the broadcast means that those guys who are each getting paid millions of dollars to do that job have never once asked, why does this happen?
Yes. And that's all. Greg Olson's asking questions. And like you said, he doesn't even have to. In this case, he agrees with the move. He doesn't have to agree with the move. His job is to articulate it. Our job is to articulate it. And then we could say, hey, we agree on this side or that side. That's why generally I hate when the color guy is asked, do you agree with this go for it decision?
Right.
It's like, well, this guy hasn't put the thought into it. A lot of them haven't put the thought into it. Oh, I hate this punt. I love this punt or whatever. If they've put the thought into it, great, ask them. But most of the time, they're deferred to and they don't really have a great answer. It's a fun discussion, though. Don't let this take away from the fact that the Bears are the number 1 seed in the NFL right now. And it is a victory Monday, victory weekend, Thanksgiving weekend for the Bears, for producer Will Hagel, for Jim Hagel, for everybody, for the whole Hagel family. Victory Monday weekend for the Bears.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video.
Check the Mic is live Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a video.
You heard the man. Subscribe.